Okay. Hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to the Gundam Explained Show. This is episode 110, so that's pretty cool. Triple digits and then in the double-digit sub-digit category. I don't know why I'm saying that. That's not a thing.
I really got to start keeping track of the episode numbers the way that you do, because having over 100 episodes of the Gundam Explained Show is a pretty big milestone.
Yeah, no, it is pretty cool, and I had trouble initially, like, keeping track. Actually, it is hard. I look at the last thumbnail I make in Photoshop, and I see where the numbers, and I'm like, there we go. Or actually, no, it's when I'm exporting it, and I look at what I've saved. But no, it's no, it is August 24th. Glad to be streaming again. It is getting near the end of summer, although it doesn't feel like it, really. Yeah, so for today's show, let's see, we're going to talk about something kind of Gundam related in a way. I don't think you guys would disagree. It's that Armored Core 6 game coming out. Just look at the reviews on that. I'll probably be streaming it here on the Gundam Explained channel, maybe tonight. Nice. If I can get it running tonight. And then we'll also talk about some other things. There's a new Metal Robot Spirits coming out of a variant of the Double Zeta that I don't know about you guys, and I know I almost say this with every Gundam, but it's like the coolest looking Gundam I've ever seen.
Honestly, I prefer the color scheme, the chest decal. Yes. All of it looks better than the actual Double Zeta.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you think so. Yeah, we'll dive into that and take a look at it. And then, so Kunia Okawa, I'm really bad at that. You know, the original artist of, not of the character designer, but of the mechanical designer of the original Gundams. Apparently, and I could be wrong, but this is what I'm reading, he just released, like, real type marking colors of the Seed Gundams just recently.
Oh, interesting.
But in his old style, which that's actually really awesome.
Yeah, because we've seen so many like Verkas of the Kunio Okawara designs. You know, that's right. There's a Hajime Katoki version of almost everything that Okawara did, but like it's nice to see him kind of like, all right, I'll see you yours and I'll redesign it back at you, kind of thing.
You know, and even look at it, I almost prefer the way it looks because it has more of the chunky robot look. But we'll look at it in a second and see what chat thinks.
Yeah, I probably should have mentioned this like last week, but anybody who is on Jake Parker's mailing list, Jake Parker has a Kickstarter up for his, giant mecha art book that's like a collection of all these different mecha that he's drawn. Some of them are obvious inspiration drawn from Macross and Gundam and stuff like that. In his mailing list last week, he actually did a top 10 ranking of like the top mecha designs in his opinion. And the RX-78-2 took number 1, obviously. But some other honorable mentions included like the AT-ST from Star Wars and like the Evangelion, whatever, the Evas. I never watched Evangelion, shoot me.
Yeah, I know, same here. I've mentioned that in a previous video. But yeah, maybe bring that up on your next live stream, because that might be a cool one. Yeah, speaking of live stream yesterday on Hatters, it was pretty cool because we were going over some like super baseline, basic Gunpla tips that, like, even for me, it's like some things where you can just use things around your house. You don't have to go buy stuff, and you can like do some really cool stuff really easily. I thought it was a really neat time to talk about some. I got some ideas out of that, especially that metallic green Sharpie.
Oh yeah, can't go wrong with Sharpies and Gunpla. But yeah, I mean, it was funny because it ended up just being, we had like a confined list, but then we kind of expanded on it and opened up a little bit more of a discussion. So that was a lot more fun.
Yeah, the biggest takeaway too I got out of that was that GM command on that Tokyo base RX-78-2 body. That's like the coolest looking.
It's very slick
design.
I honestly didn't expect it to look as cool as it did when I was throwing that together. So
it's the proportions of the head with the body, because on the GM command that chest is big, but you don't really, that doesn't really call out to you, but then seeing it on that RX-78 body, that's more of a streamlined body. Yeah,
Yeah.
looks good. Yeah, before we get started in all of our topics, I was gonna cover any Gundam stuff we got into this week. Steven, anything? Or Gundam adjacent?
Gundam adjacent. Yeah, yeah, that's it's funny because, you mentioned Armored Core 6, and, if I see that meme, "This is now an Armored Core server," posted on my Discord server one more time, I might just flip. But, no, actually, I did do something interesting yesterday. I posted on, various social media that I finished building the Bondoc kit here, and you might notice I already detailed it a little bit with some, Neo Zeon paraphernalia.
That was the 3D printed one.
No, so this actually, back when Bandai released those kind of builders parts upgrade kits, they have like a sheet that is just logos and crests. I don't know where I put it, but it's got like a Xeon crest, a Federation crest, and it's got a Neo Xeon crest, like the sleeves one. They don't have a Char's Neo Xeon crest, which I was a little disappointed by. Well, after melting several of the actual ones, in various attempts using a lighter, using a heat gun, and then eventually trying to use acetone, I eventually just ended up using some Oyumaru and made a stamp mold and cast the part in like some soft clay that allowed me
That's
to
how you did it.
shape it around the curvature of the bound dock. So I think it's gonna look pretty sweet when it's all painted gold and
Wow. Dude, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I can't wait for you to paint it. Now, are you gonna hand paint it or spray?
That's a good question. I guess it depends on the extent of the paint job. We'll see what.
Oh, because you're still gonna map that out. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I might post some designs. There's another builder in the sort of community or with us, Gunpla Skyfire. He typically will post on Instagram like a little 9-up, kind of like the Mega Man boss
oh
selection screen,
yeah,
and he'll have like the kit that he's working on, and then the 8 options of
that's
color
funny.
scheme that he would go with. And so I might do something like that. And again, it was the community that voted to go Neo Xeon on the bound dock, so
Yeah.
I'll leave it up to the community which colors to go with too.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. I can't wait for that because I think that's gonna be a sick concept in general.
Yeah.
Really, like I feel like you should then even do some fanfic and then
Oh
do a
yeah.
video.
We're definitely gonna have a story around it. But
Yeah,
what
no,
about
that's
you?
cool.
What Gundam goodies have you gotten into this week?
Really, the only Gundam related stuff I got into, and then I'll get into some Gundam adjacent stuff, was when I was making my videos. So like, um, with the Detolf too, like I'm proud of that, even though I still think there's people out there that have cleaner looks to it. One thing I forgot to add in the video is that I've noticed when I look online about people that have their Detolf shelf set up, they have like a riser for it. I actually on Amazon, and I should have added this in the video, I bought these legs for it. And I saw, what the weight was of the Detolf and the weight of the legs, what they can hold. And then I took everything out, tipped it over, and screwed the legs on the bottom, picked it back up, and I think it helps where it's kind of raised just a little bit.
Yeah.
And the other thing I didn't talk about too is I have a couple of these. It's a rubber mat I bought on Amazon. The cat unfortunately likes to scratch it, and that disappoints me.
As
But
cats like to do.
it's because if something ever falls or drops at the shelf, it will land on this rubber cushion, and
That's
it's like a
smart.
soft rubber. Yeah, because that happened with a Metal Robots Wing Zero I had that I dropped, and the V fin broke off, and that
Yeah.
disappointed me. I mean, it's metal, so it's heavier. But okay, so oh yeah, what was my other videos I looked at? The obscure Gundams. I thought that was pretty neat. In fact,
Yeah.
I feel like I can make a video. It's like the 100 obscure Gundams that exist and just name, a whole lot. But no, Talos
Now, would
helped me
it be
pick some.
obscure MS or just obscure Gundams?
Just
Because
Gundam. Yeah,
yeah,
just
okay.
Gundam. And even in that category, even though then there would be like the sub video of like, what is a Gundam? First of
Yeah.
all, to then say that this is an obscure Gundam or not. But, yeah, no, and then, Yeah, I reviewed that Gundam Evolve because I've watched it before, but now I'm watching it with the more knowledge I've gathered the past couple years of doing Gundam Explained of the Gundam universe. And and the community helped me out with this, but on that episode 2 with the Zeta Gundam, there was just a lot of misinformation in general. And
Yeah.
you know what? I now come to accept that that happens with Gundam. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like, especially with the older Gundam, it happens more often with like side stuff or
Oh,
like
definitely.
side supplemental material about the world. And it's like, you know what? That's so much to keep track of. There's a difference between the people making it and then the people that are nerdy about it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like trying to wrap my head around that Gundam Mark II promotional video, and I'm like, why would the AUG even produce something like this?
Yeah.
Like it was a neat concept, but wouldn't it be the Titans that would make a promotional video talking about the Mark II and
Yeah.
not the AUG? That was an interesting.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was pretty interesting. It was like because it was the AE Anaheim Electronics video, but of the Gundam painted in AU colors, you know, and
Yeah.
it's like it wouldn't
And
have worked that way, but uh, I don't know.
and it was up against Rick Diaz too, so like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of weird stuff there, but oh well. Yeah. So, but okay. Another thing. So I love watching Red Letter Media. I don't know if we've talked about them before. They're YouTube,
oh yeah.
and they did a review of RoboCop 2. And I love it when they talk about it. And you know, I'm like in their age group. I think we are. So like a lot of the
Yeah.
things they talk about, a lot of times I gel with. Like the fact that they say like RoboCop 2 is not. It's actually pretty good for a sequel, and it's almost like the same thing, and that
Yeah.
it uh like they talked about how they watched it more than the first one, and thinking back, I'm like, yeah, I actually watched the second one more than the first, and I don't know why. Um, I,
I think the second one was a little toned down. Like it was when they realized that there were more kids watching RoboCop than adults because RoboCop 1 is brutal.
yeah, so that's a good point because the second one still has all the bloody squibs, but in the
Oh yeah.
first one, it will have scenes that are like overboard bloody squibs. So like it's
Oh
almost
yeah.
like yeah, toning it down a bit. And so here's another thing. You guys can judge me, but you know I was showing my son the movies because I had watched them when I was younger than him, and I loved RoboCop. It's
Oh yeah.
funny. I still have it in the attic, and I now realize this is the oldest toy I have. But when RoboCop came out, they came out with this like tall talking RoboCop,
I
and
remember that.
okay, and
Yeah.
yeah, I still have that, and
You called for backup.
yeah, it's like
That's
it's
yeah.
like your move, creep. Drugs are trouble, stuff like that. But
It's
um,
so funny the things that they tried to do to get kids to not commit crimes. Like, we're going to make a superhero that's a cop, and we're going to sell toys that tell kids to not do drugs. That's-
and it's interesting because like it always goes back to where a lot of times things are made for kids, but things that are just made for anybody, kids can really be drawn to, and they can still sort of get something out of it. Like after that, I loved RoboCop. I loved the whole thing of him stopping bad guys. You know, I
yeah.
mean, you know, and they had the TV show, the third movie, which I remember back then thinking the third movie, I could tell it was tame, even though, but
Yeah.
here's interesting. So the director of Empire Strikes Back directed RoboCop 2, and I did not know that for the longest time.
He's just like the sequel doctor.
Yeah, well, he also did that James Bond movie, Never Say Never Again, which was with a different studio. And I don't know if you remember
Oh,
that whole thing where
yeah.
it was with Sean Connery, but it was because it was a different studio. And it's like, that guy is a good director because he knows how to take any material and then make it actually good. Even if it's not revolutionary, or he's not like one of those idea artists that just
And we're
comes
talking
up.
about Irvin Kershner, right?
Yeah, Irvin
Yeah.
Kershner. Yeah, it's
My
like
favorite quote about him is the Harrison Ford bit where they asked like, "What's the biggest difference between working for Lucas and working for Kershner?" And he's like, "Well, Kershner's a little bit taller."
I love that.
Classic Harrison Ford.
Yeah, I know. But no, just makes me appreciate that guy as a director.
Yeah.
Like, now I could see, like, you had Paul Verhoeven make the first one. Who makes the second one? And apparently they had another director and he fell through, so they went to this guy. It's like this guy knows how to take the essence of what something is supposed to be and portray it on screen in a quality manner. I mean, he was
Yeah.
even able to copy the satirical, like, uh American economy and news and stuff in Robocop 2. Just like Paul Verhoeven would do in, the first Robocop. So, like, uh, yeah, I'm now amazed. I'm gonna kind of go back to this guy's filmography and watch more of
Next
his
thing you're
movies.
gonna tell me is that, like, he directed Predator 2, and like
Yeah, I know
that's
that. Which it's funny because Predator 2 is another one of those movies that it's like a sequel that's actually really good.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, it took like this concept of the Predator, and then similar to James Cameron with Alien, where it's like,
yeah.
Alien was this kind of enclosed, capsulated space, just like Predator was kind of just in the jungle, isolated. But then, both Aliens and Predator 2 kind of opened up the world a little bit, and you know,
That's what I think is interesting about when sequels or you come out with new things. It's like there's a lot of times where it's like, well, let's just make a sequel, but it's got to be low budget. So how can we make this where we're not spending a lot of money? Or not that it's
right,
low budget, but it's like sometimes it might have more of a budget, but it's only based on how much they think they're going to get. So they're framing what the story is going to be based on the budget. Whereas a lot of times it's like, well, what if it was this scenario, like Gremlins 2, I think is another good example of an
that's an
excellent sequel.
excellent,
Yeah.
excellent sequel.
It's like when these movies want to go somewhere else. And you know what, that's funny because like Blade 2 is an example of where I still like the first Blade better, but Blade 2 just went more into that action and gore, fighting vampires en masse.
Yeah.
It yeah,
Well, and
there's
like with the example of Gremlins too, like you mentioned, it's when you have a director that can come in and identify what made the first one successful. Because when they made Gremlins, they weren't trying to make a comedy. They wanted to make like a scary horror movie based around Christmas. But then when they realized, oh, this is kind of like Evil Dead level of campy and silliness, they went full blown that direction with the sequel. So
So in my mind, I always had an idea of a new Gremlins movie where it's like the world has found out about them after the New York incident, and there's a place in Southeast Asia in the cave where the Mogwai are native to, and then you start seeing people on social media streaming like them going there and taking them home, and then like local military had to come and try to stop people, but now people have the gremlins around the world, and then they're getting them wet, and then it goes from there. But and I would frame it like COVID, like what we were trying to do with lockdowns and COVID, but with the
right.
gremlins.
Well, and again, with like the sort of misinformation stuff that goes
Yeah.
around, I loved that scene in Gremlins 2 where the guy's kind of scoffing at it, and he's like, "Well, what if they are on a plane and they
Oh
eat
yeah,
peanuts, but they cross over a time zone? Does it count as eating after midnight? Like,
I
what are
love
the
that.
rules?"
Yeah, it's almost like the movie knew what it was and
Yeah,
was yeah, I love that stuff. I tell you, I bet there's when making a sequel, there's like these three ways that you can approach a sequel where it's like you do the same thing and just make it just as good, where you do it but bigger, or
yeah.
where you like you're self-referential and I feel like but and again, to top off this RoboCop thing, the other thing I realized is I just recently checked out the Ghost in the Shell anime because once I realized I thought anime was cool, I watched Ghost in the Shell, but realized RoboCop is Ghost in the Shell.
I never made that connection until you said that, and I was like,
Yeah,
"Wait a
it's
second, yeah, it's
and what's interesting is RoboCop does it very surface level, where Ghost in the Shell, the creators are like, "That's interesting. Well, why don't they just go deeper about that? Like the thought of
yeah,
you waking up and then you're in this machine that makes you something else, but then like, were you something before? And then how
right."
does the human mind deal with that and memories? Yeah,
And RoboCop very like, it's obviously not a deep movie. It's an 80s action flick, so it's not gonna start exploring topics like transhumanism and, that type of cyberpunk
right.
aesthetic. But I think that Ghost in the Shell obviously got a little bit more curious about that and started exploring those themes a little bit more.
It's funny how this circle has happened to me because it's like I'm watching this anime that I'm realizing, wow, this anime is amazing, and these newer Hollywood action movies are taking inspiration from them. But then I'm realizing, wait a minute, there's all these American-made movies in the '80s and late '70s that inspired a lot of anime. From Alien to Blade Runner to Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
But then again, they probably got their inspiration. There's always this back and forth, and I love it. I love like the cross cultural inspirations that create like some of the coolest art.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you see that especially in film, I think, because film is a media where, you know, I guess maybe it's a little bit more easy to see where someone's inspirations come from, like, George Lucas pulling from Kurosawa,
Yeah.
and then, you have something like Kill Bill, which represents
Oh,
that sort of secular motion where it's like you have this Japanese story that plays on like kind of the American shoot 'em up style movies, and then Tarantino goes and says, "I like that. I'm gonna flip it back and make it American again and make
yeah.
Kill Bill." So it's very yeah, there's a symbiotic relationship going on.
It makes me think that there's a promising future for new stories being told in film. That I feel like lately there's just kind of been, film hasn't been as interesting for me lately, and it just could be my age, but kind of
Thanks,
maybe
Marvel.
yeah. But it could be cool if they go back, like when I made that AI Gundam art, a lot of it looked like James Cameron slash, uh, you know, 80s sci-fi, but what if they took 80s sci-fi aesthetics and made it like, then they kind of sort of do that with the Star Wars shows, but not really. You know,
Yeah, I think that modern creators still are a little bit too poisoned by the technology that we have, having the internet and having,
that's a good
wireless
point.
communication and things like that. I am a huge sucker for like cassette punk style 80s retro sci-fi where it's like that aliens style, I don't want people using disk drives. I want people using cassettes and
Yeah.
cartridges for like everything.
Yeah, watching Bubblegum Crisis, which I'm on the last episode of the first series. I love it. It's like so good. But I love
Yeah.
it where she got this video and it looked like a CD but in a long flat uh cassette, and then she had this device that's in front of her and it's kind of flat, but then like the screen opens up and it has a place on the side made to put the tape in, and it seemed archaic but it looked so futuristic. And I
Yeah.
love, there was a movie, and I could be getting this wrong, a movie called It Follows. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I
And they
love that
had,
movie.
do you remember where they had that weird old future tech just sometimes, like the watch?
Yeah, it was kinda strange the way that that was kind of worked into just
Yeah, it
just
was like,
randomly worked in there.
yeah, yeah. I kind of like that idea, but I wonder if that was trying to tell the viewer this is like a different reality. I never thought about that.
Maybe so. I mean, there's a lot of things, and this is one of those kind of issues that people have nowadays where it's like, I imagine our kids are gonna be watching movies where like, "Well, why didn't James Bond just take out a cell phone and call them and say that there was a bomb on the"
Yeah,
there's like so many of those things that's like, "Wow, we could have solved this if we just had a phone." But, and that's one of the beautiful things that I have to respect about Tomino and Gundam is that it anticipated those problems of technology advancing, where it's like, okay, maybe wireless communication is going to be a thing in the future, but when we get so far into the future that there is a plot particle that interrupts that type of communication, now all of a sudden we need psychic communication to break through that barrier. So,
you're right. I love it, and that's one thing that makes it the world believable, that pulls me in. It's like
oh yeah.
these characters are really having to go through something that even I could relate to. It's like, oh man, I can't use this type of communication. That even, when the mobile suit would put its hand on another one to communicate or shoot the little communication cable. Or
Yeah.
I think there's even a part where, was it Full Frontal was going against the Revel ship, and I think like because they dispersed Simonovsky, like his beam weaponry was not working or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like so it's yeah, I gotta say, props for coming up with that Minovsky plot device, as you say,
Yeah.
because it actually does help in a way where it explains kind of how science is, where we advance, we find particles we use we can to manipulate things, and makes the story go further. But yeah, speaking of Gundam, let's move on to actually something that's not related to Gundam. So actually, never mind. Um,
It's tough. You know, you and I were talking about this yesterday, how it's been sort of a slow Gundam season,
yeah,
just this month. And part of that's due in part to the ending of Witch from Mercury. It's to the ending of Gundam Evolution.
no new
There's just
games. Yeah,
no new games,
yeah.
no new content out there, except if you count Kickstarter comic books. I don't know. That's
Yeah, that one. It actually, I think it officially launched yesterday. I think, and
Mhm.
it's at 17,000 out of 80. So that's actually not bad that quickly.
Yeah,
Because
usually when it comes to like crowdfunding, you'll see the largest spike is when it starts, and then there's usually like a spike towards the end as it's coming to a close. So we'll see how what the final total is, but
it's funny because it's we talked about before. I think it's not something I'm interested in, but I would love to see it succeed. Just so more Gundam. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So and it puts me in a pickle of like, well, do I contribute to the Kickstarter just so that I can throw my
Of
hat
course.
in the ring, or do I count on the community to take one for the team?
Yeah, but so yeah, to your point, there's been such a lull in Gundam stuff that like I've kind of gone back to like just playing a bunch of different video games, which is my
Yeah,
first love, gaming. And so like on my Blue Gamer channel, I have been actually posting consistently on Fridays. I've been doing a live. I'll do another live tomorrow where it's like all the gaming news that's all in my head. I just speak my mind on it. But
that's awesome.
Armored Core 6 is supposed to drop, and that's a mech game made by FromSoft, who does the um,
That's like your two greatest loves is like Mecha and FromSoft.
yeah. In fact, hold on a second. I'm trying to do a review on Unicorn, the game on PS3, because that was From Software,
Yeah.
and it is actually pretty cool. I just haven't really had time to dive into it. But so Armored Core, which I played a little bit back in the day, but it wasn't my thing until like the Xbox releases. I sort of liked. I think it was PS3 also, but I was mainly a 360 guy. Because there's something about those 360 era games that I love. They're just like schlocky action games.
Yeah.
So GameSpot's giving it an 8 out of 10, and this is Armored Core 6. Destructoid 9 out of 10. Inverse 10 out of 10. IGN 8 out of 10. Eurogamer 10 out of 10. I mean, 10 out of 10 is pretty insane. VG247 6 out of 10.
Wow, that's a you know what? I appreciate that there are some honest reviewers out there that maybe are, I don't know, maybe not just riding the hype on it. They're going to try and give an honest assessment.
Because I totally 100% believe that it's only because of Elden Ring that Armored Core 6 is being as hyped as it is. Because the other
I
Armored
think
Core
that's
games
fair.
never had hype like this.
Yeah, well, and it's also been like a decade since there was an Armored Core game, whereas,
Yeah.
Souls likes have been
Yeah.
coming out kind of consistently. So,
Yeah, because for me, it would be, I remember when they would have their releases, the latest ones being on Xbox 360, I would be like, oh, finally, another cool Japanese game for me to play that no one talks about.
yeah.
But yeah, I think like that whole From Software, and that's the thing. When they first announced Armored Core 6, everyone's like, "Oh, cool! They're gonna make like a Souls-like version." And it's like, no, it's gonna be a From Software game, but it's not gonna
Yeah.
play Souls-like. And even the reviewers say it does not play like a Souls game. It,
Yeah, I mean, and it shouldn't because,
yeah, it's
a
a
mech
different thing.
game
Yeah,
is not like a boss fighter. Like it's just it's two different genres.
yeah. So yeah, I just can't wait to play it because I love mechs. We don't get enough mech games that are mech that feel like it's about the mech.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like there's a mech in it or there's a robot, but I I should be playing it tonight, and I don't really have too much planned, I should be streaming it, and I'll post that I'm gonna stream it, and I'll play like the first level or two, and look at the mechs
Nice.
and see the customizations and all that, and then I'll probably do a more deeper dive in terms of like a review on my Blue Gamer channel later
Yeah,
on, like next week or something. So
and that's fair. So
yeah,
now
so
that kind of begs a question to me though. When it comes to rating and reviewing video games, it's a bold statement to say something is a 10 out of 10. So what would be your standard that is the 10 out of 10? Like what would you consider the criteria in order to achieve the best score?
it's so good question. So back when I was doing my Blue Gamer blog regularly, I reviewed doing something that ACG now does, but mine would be buy, try, avoid. And so I would, by the
Okay.
end of it, I would say you should give this a try, whether that's renting, borrowing, um,
Stealing, no.
forget a sale. I think is a good
Yeah.
a way to try it if there's a sale. For yeah, that's funny though. I do not see an issue, even though in practice pirating would be illegal. But to try the game to see if you want to buy it, I think it makes sense, especially when we're like, what do we want to spend our $60 or $70 on?
I think that the art of the game demo is kind of lost. Like I
Yeah.
I, I used to love having demos and even just demo discs. I think like one of the old PS1s came with just a demo disc of like 10 game
Yep,
demos,
that's right.
and I ended up playing the heck out of it. Like,
Yeah, but it's come back. It just recently, like there's a new Toxic Crusader game coming out, and there's a demo. There's that RTS I did a quick look of on Blue Gamer, Tempest Rising. They have a demo
yeah.
out. Um, I wanted to try out Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and Ubisoft has these 5-hour demos for their games, which is pretty crazy. But it's because their games are so big, they figure after 5 hours you'd want, some more of that,
You're invested pretty deep after 5
Yeah.
hours. I mean, that's well, and
Um,
I love, like, the whole speed running community around, like, the 5-minute demo of Ocarina of Time that was on Super Smash Brothers. Like, the fact that there was a whole, you know, like, a whole community around a game demo,
yeah,
which is just silly.
I love that. I love that because it's like a piece of specific art, and then people are like totally figuring it out, breaking it apart, you know. Um,
Yeah,
but
transformative.
But when it comes to reviews, it to me it's interesting. Like if it's going to be like an out of 10 thing, I think it's very case by case and personal because there's games that I would give like GBO 2, I would give that a 10 out of 10 even though I know there are some flaws with it. Like
Sure.
you know, I'm trying to think of some other games. Like Breath of the Wild to me that's a 10 out of 10 game. Um like the Ninja Gaiden on Xbox, 10 out of 10. Company of Heroes, 10 out of 10. This, like the new Halo Infinite, I would almost just give it a 5 out of 10 because, like, it was good, but just lacking in content, so there was not much there. Even the
Yeah.
single player was a cool open world single player, but like I got through that faster than I wanted to, and then there was not much to it. And it's like half of it is good because it's a well crafted mechanic of first person shooting. But
Yeah.
then the missing five would be like, but it's not doing anything interesting or fun, in the world. And um, what's another game that I just beat recently? Oh, like the Sniper Elite games. I would give all
Yeah.
those tens because it's like what I want out of a game. Like when I go into the world, I can choose what I want to do, and it's open world, but they have it set up where there's crafted areas you run into. It's not like a Ghost Recon or a Division where it's just there's a group of enemies right here, shoot them.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
yeah,
That's interesting. So, I guess for me, and it sounds like this is similar to what you're saying, is for me the probably most important thing when it comes to giving a game a 10 out of 10 is the game mechanic enjoyable and fun? Would you play that game if it were a different genre, a different because everyone gives like Red Dead Redemption 10 out of 10s, and I'm like, I hate westerns.
oh
Like,
yeah, That's
You
that's a
know,
good point. Yeah.
despite the fact that the world is so rich and engaging and the story's kinda cool, there's so much to do and so many different, like, micro mechanics of the game. I'm like, if this were a sci-fi game, yeah, I'd love it. Or if it were, a samurai game, I'd love it. Which I think, Jamcal X mentioned, Ghost of Tsushima, great game. But yeah, I just hate Westerns, so
That's a good point because, like, even when I was playing Red Dead Redemption, and I played a little bit more of the first one, but even the second one, it wasn't my thing. And I don't want to say I hate westerns, but I just don't care to play in a western setting, I guess. But because the mechanics
yeah,
seem to be there, like, and
yeah.
this is a good point you bring up when it comes to like the setting, and I think it's a Venn diagram of both setting and mechanics. Because, for instance,
Oh, yeah.
Gundam Evolution, it's a Gundam game, but I have no desire to play it.
Right. Same
But
thing.
but I guess it's more of hero shooters in general. So the setting isn't going to get me to play the game, but the mechanics could get me to play a game. But I wonder if there's a game that had good mechanics that I didn't like the set. Yeah, and then we're talking about Red Dead Redemption. So I think it could go both ways.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a good thing because that is we're able to really hone in on what we like and spend time with what we like. So
Definitely.
Starfield, I'm somewhat excited about it, but
Yeah.
past games made by that developer have been way more narrative heavy to where I'm tired and bored.
And fantasy, I know that fantasy is not like your
Yeah,
because I mean, spoiler alert, chat, but he's never watched Lord of the Rings, so
sorry. Yeah, just yeah,
but
that's
no, I
a,
mean, but that's a great point. And like, if Starfield is just Skyrim in space, does that kind of um what's the word that I'm looking for? Does that move the needle for you?
yeah, and I'm curious. It's really gonna be if, and I was playing another game that did this recently, and I can't remember it, but it's like if the beginning it's constantly having me do linear walk to this guy, he's going to tell you something, walk here, they're going to tell you something, walk here, they're going to tell you something. It's like I just want to explore. And good
Yeah.
call. I'm not into the fantasy setting, but I love the Souls games because
Yeah.
they just have amazing mechanics. So I will play them. Also Dragon's Dogma by Capcom. That
Oh, okay.
awesome
Yeah.
mechanics. I love that. Um and I think Armored Core, the only reason I'm playing it is because it is a mech game. It could be after a few levels of playing it, I'm like, yeah, it's just okay. But
Yeah.
I feel like that Front Mission Evolved game that came out like around 2011 or so, I forget. It was not a turn-based game. They decided to make a action game
Action game.
instead.
Yeah.
And it was a serviceable. I had a fun time. I've beaten it once. One of the most awesome last bosses in a game ever. Honestly, I think many people have not experienced it. Um, but I really only played it because it was mechs. And
Yeah.
playing it, it's just okay. But it keeps me because it's okay and it's mechs. It's very interesting. I like how there's not a cut and dry. I like this. I don't like this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you could come up with examples of, a game with a setting I don't like, but mechanics I love, a game with a setting I love with mechanics I don't like, and, you know.
You know what? Here's another one, and I think, and tell me if I'm wrong here. I think it's easier to play a game in a setting you like, but the mechanics are just not there, than it is to play a game with good mechanics, but in a setting you don't care for. Like the G.I. Joe Blackout game that came out a couple
Oh,
years
yeah.
ago. It is like a budget, but it was G.I. Joe, and it had decent combat, and you could switch between Snake Eyes and Duke and all that. So like I had fun.
I mean, I think it depends. I think it depends on how much you love the setting
Yeah,
because,
that's true.
for instance, you and I both love Gundam, but neither of
Oh,
us really got into Gundam Evo
that's true.
because
That's
the
very
the,
true.
the
Yeah.
gameplay dragged down the setting just that much
And you
that
know what? The other thing too is I've noticed this when games are kind of a one-trick pony, like a just PvP shooter, like that's even harder to like if Gundam Evolution had like a single player campaign with its
that makes a
mechanics,
huge
I
difference.
would probably play through the whole thing and
Yeah.
unlock everything there is. Yeah.
Honestly, I think that a Gundam game in the style of the Lost Planet sequels would be pretty sweet, where it's like a co-op campaign and you have a multiplayer lobby where people can drop in, and
Yeah,
that would be
Lost
pretty
Planet
sweet.
2 is so underrated.
Yeah.
I underappreciated. I don't know what the word is. I mean, even like how some of the there's, and I posted it somewhere recently where there's a mission in Lost Planet 2 where you can combine mechs. Like two people could be in these different mechs and combine into one.
So
And
awesome.
I know, like, and it had like that train level. I'll always remember where like, aren't you like first you're chasing after a train, and then once you get on it, you're fighting on it while the guys are trying to shoot at you.
Yeah, and that that's such a overdone kind of trope, I think, in movies and video games. But once you introduce that element of like, well, now there's two of you, and you kind of have to
Yeah.
look out for each other while you're on the train, then it's like adds a whole another layer of complexity and excitement to it. So
I
the
tell you
only thing I
these.
didn't like was that one level where you're kind of stuck in a corridor, and it's just those two giant eyes shooting fireballs at you from either side.
Oh, yeah. They had some, yeah, when they were trying to change up the mechanics for like the levels or whatever
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah, I tell you, like, I really feel like something happened with multiplayer games where they went the wrong direction, and I really think it had to do with more of the moment to moment dopamine hit instead of, I don't know if you ever played Siphon Filter Omega Strain. It was it
No, I
was
didn't get to that one. The
okay.
original Siphon Filter loved that game, but
Yeah, Omega Strain had co-op where in a map players would go different directions to do completely different things. Like one guy's like, "Okay, I need to get the laptop out of this building, but it's on fire. I can get in by going up on the ambulance. You can lift them up to go on the ambulance, but before he breaks in, the other guy has to go to, I think, the turn off the water because I think the idea
oh
was
yeah.
it was going to cause the sprinklers to come down so they can grab the laptop before it gets overrun by water. So the other guy had to go and turn off. Like it was stuff like that where you would split up and do things different places. And
And that's cool,
yeah,
but it's convoluted, and what ends up happening is it's a very, like you said, it's a linear solution.
yeah,
It would be
yeah.
a lot cooler if it were a little bit more free form and you kind of had options for how you wanted to approach the problem and solve it, as opposed to a prescribed, this is what this player is supposed to do, this is what this player is supposed to do.
It's like in these games, like, and I use Division as an example because Division is a very linear multiplayer game, even though it's fun. But it
Mhm.
should be where there are these maybe platinum rewards you can get by doing really specific optional objectives. Like it should be kind of like, like in Destiny. You know how Destiny kind of, I haven't played it in a while, but it kind of has some obscure things you can do in multiplayer. Um,
Yeah,
but
I honestly haven't tried it.
yeah, Destiny. Yeah, it's that's a whole other discussion. It's like I felt like that. I felt like they went too far in that dopamine hit type of shoot, numbers, numbers.
Yeah.
What loot did I get? Instead of like how to approach a mission, And that's why I like Sniper Elite 5 co-op in that whole mission where you can have someone that comes in as an opposing sniper somewhere in the map. And
That's so awesome.
anyway, lots of video game talk. That is for another time.
Yeah, sorry, I derailed us from where
No, I could be doing it forever. I can't help it. Yeah, that's Armored Core 6. Check out my channel later. I'll be streaming it. But okay, here's what's really sick is,
finally some Gundam.
yeah, I know, right? No, but one of our supporters, Tom, he posted this in Discord. I guess, yeah, hints of this prototype Double Zeta Gundam metal robot spirits, which is totally the type of thing I like, the metal robot spirits line. But this prototype one, and I was about to say, it looks like the best Gundam design I have ever seen, but I say that all the time.
Right.
Um,
You see, this is where you need to scale down your 10 out of 10s, because you're giving out too many 10 out of 10s.
exactly, exactly.
10 out of 10 Gundam.
But looking at this has, I almost feel like it's like one of the coolest looking robots ever.
It's
There's so much
pretty
going
damn
on
sweet.
for it. Like it's the chonkiness, the proportions, where it's not too slim and humanoid, but it's not like an abstract robot. But it's
Yeah.
got like fins in the right places. the colors too. Like there's something about there's a lot of black to it in a way where it really contrasts great against the lighter color, the yellow. And then also
Yeah.
a cool thing about it is it has a ship mode, which I love that stuff.
Oh
And
yeah.
um let's see. I wonder if they've got a better
Yeah, there
these
aren't a ton of
look cool.
great images of it, which that's one of the reasons I'm excited about there being a robot spirits of it because now we're going to be able to see it from a lot more different angles and
It could be in GBO2. I don't know, but I love you brought it up, but how it has the emblem on the chest, the upper chest piece. Like I
so
always love
nice.
that look. Like how Thunderbolt does that with one of the GMs where it puts that little
Yeah, the
cross up
Federation
there.
symbol there.
Yeah, is
It's
that what is that called? Just the Federation emblem, or is there?
that's all. I mean, that's all I'd call it.
Because then
That's
there's the V that's on crotches, and what's
yes, the
that?
crotch V.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's what makes it a Gundam. If it has a crotch V. No, because there's a
Ooh,
lot of GMs with it. But a
yeah.
GM
Well,
is a
and then there's
Gundam.
the turn A doesn't have a crotch V. It has a crotch pit.
Ah, that's right,
Yeah.
crotch pit. Yeah, crotch pit. Yeah. Anyway, I love this look, and so apparently this one, I think it was posted in Discord, but it's actually coming out in February, and I think it's going to be like at 200 or something. It's going to be kind of pricey. Although the metal robot
Yeah.
spirits tend to be pricey. Like I got
Fair.
the double Zeta metal robot spirits, and that one was under 200, and then the Zeta was 150. Although I think one of them actually wasn't the metal, and it was just a Verka. Yeah, this is a cost signature, so that's cool. I gotta say, this is now in my top 5 as of August 24th, in the
I'm gonna
hour
hold you
between
to it.
11 a.m. and 12 p.m. Central.
Yeah. Um, and this would be a fun high grade project for somebody that is not overwhelmed with projects like I am.
That's a
Get
good
yourself
point. I
a
wonder
high
if
grade double Zeta and glue across to its chest.
it doesn't seem like that even exists, yeah, as a high grade. Wow. So,
Do some
huh.
fun stuff with it.
Wait a minute. It searched the wrong thing. Hold on. Let me do that again. No.
Nah.
There's something about the double Zeta. I love the look. I don't know. It seems like at first glance it's not a cool suit, but when you like look at it, it's like that's cool.
Yeah, it's what did we deem the quality as? It's just Gundamness. It's got a high level of Gundamness
Yes,
to it.
high level of Gundamness. Yeah, it has to do with that face. Like the face evokes the original RX-78 too, but then it just goes full on with the geometry. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of designs, so yeah, this is that thing about Kunio Okawara. So, and it says unveil freedom Gundam and justice Gundam real type colors, but like, and I'm reading this like just now, and that's fine, but I think that's pretty awesome actually that for as long as Seed's been out, it's like he's still doing this stuff in his
Yeah.
signature style. And I will say they even look better than the actual Seed designs, just in terms of the proportions.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the Justice. So
Oh,
I,
that's
I
cool.
I really actually love this alternate color.
The other one's purple, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Okay.
like a
Yeah,
pink.
that's true. I do like this color too. Yeah, I know we have a lot of Seed fans in here, and we've grown to love Destiny. Um, but I will say these design. There's something about it where they're a little chunkier, with their proportions. The head is a little bigger compared to the body, and there's something about that with the heads. Like sometimes I feel like a Gundam design will have a head that's too small, and I think
Yeah,
larger is better.
it's a bit of a turn off when you got a small head.
You're good at that.
But no, I mean, and I love that he broke out like the old color pencils and did the classic art style for these.
Yeah, and then I guess they have a um, what are these called? The G frames that are going to be
Oh yeah,
released of them. Which, to be honest, the G frames are pretty cool. Just they're it's almost like we with your video yesterday we're talking about like the baseline tips to up your Gundams. Like sometimes your high grade you can get away with doing just a little, but with G frames you even if it's just simple stuff, it's night and day when you detail a G frame
yeah,
because a base G frame looks too much like a capsule toy
right.
until you
But they've
uh,
got so many panel lines and so many like creases and crevices.
yeah.
Honestly, like just giving them a wash or like panel
Yeah,
lining them goes a really long way.
I think yeah, you have to panel line. Those actually look pretty cool. I'm gonna be honest. Let's see. So these items are going to be shipped. Yeah, I'll have to look that up to see if those are going to be. You know what? But that's the thing. I try not to buy anything that's non-UC. But you know what? Do it. Do what makes you
It's
happy.
the UC designer, so that's like
Oh
UC
yeah,
adjacent.
that's true. He's taking that kind of UC aesthetic and adding it into with the real type. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Let's see. Anyway, yeah, I think that's it with the yeah, the news stuff. Not much else going on. Again, yeah, we've talked about that, but it could be pretty soon we get the new Battlelog shows. UC Engage is going to be coming out, which with that next 100 project, that UC Engage is part of. I wonder how far in the future UC Engage is going to go, and is it going to start going into stories and redo animation for like, yeah, Victory or F91? That would be
Be
pretty
pretty
neat.
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that they're bringing it over to the West is a huge indicator that they're not going to stop service on it anytime soon. So
That is interesting thinking about that. They're doing this Kickstarter, bringing over UC Engage. Like, what's more telling about what this news about this live action movie? Like, and then there's the writer strike. Even though they said that they've already got something written, but then
yeah,
there's an actor strike, so you can't have people act. Yeah, I wonder. You know what? I wonder how good this could be for some projects. Did you ever see the movie The Marine with John Cena?
no, I didn't
Great movie. Okay.
actually. Oh, okay.
And what's cool about it though, and I read about this later, is the movie got shelved for a year. So in the meantime, the special effects people were just constantly tweaking like the frames of CG to make so when you watch it, the CGI explosions look really good. And did you ever watch Peacemaker on HBO?
No, I don't have HBO.
Ah, okay.
But I mean, I do enjoy a John Cena flick because he's got a
Okay.
great sense of humor and
No,
all that
yeah.
stuff.
Well, it's cool because in the Peacemaker show, like Robert Patrick, of
Yeah,
Liquid Terminator fame, is like a main antagonist, and he is in the Marine also. So it's like John Cena and him play against each other in these two different roles. It's pretty cool. But I, well, what I'm getting at is I'm hoping they're taking so much time with this live action Gundam movie. I'm thinking it's gonna be good, even if it's not what certain people want.
yeah. I would rather something get delayed and get a better product in the end than rush something out the door just because people are anticipating it. Um,
And that's what's been going on in the video game industry. They're releasing games that aren't ready, and then there's been like layoffs. I think EA just announced layoffed like a third of their BioWare team or whatever that was working on, or yeah, the team that's working on Dragon Age, the new Dragon Age game or something. Like, yeah, the game developers don't really, and there's no strikes going on there.
no,
Maybe,
surprisingly.
yeah, maybe that needs to happen because it
Well,
seems like they pump so much money into these games and then they turn out flat.
I think there's a personality difference there between developers and people who are used to getting a lot of attention for their work. Developers are kind of the unsung heroes of the video game universe, whereas actors and writers get all the plaudits, they get all the shout outs and the praise. And so they tend to have a little bit more of an inflated ego compared to the dev that's hunched over their their computer for 18 hours a day, and then
Finish this off real quick. I don't know if you heard the controversy about the Starfield start screen.
I did. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Mark Kern, so
I am too, and because he comes at things like we were just saying, take your time. Full. I don't think the lack of a start screen means
no, no.
anything, but there is that level that Mark Kern takes games at, where it's every aspect of the game has to be incredible to the player. Even if the start screen, if it's just something simple, it should be something that you think of. That's part of your
Yeah,
pipeline.
because ultimately, it's like if you don't care about one thing and it's the first thing that the player is going to see, then what else don't you care about in the game? And I think he even elaborated to say like, look, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying that this is a red flag to me, and it should be to everyone. It's like, and that doesn't just apply to video games. I mean, how many movies do you go and watch and the first 5 minutes are just terrible? And it's like, you don't even really care if the rest of the movie gets better. If it doesn't hook you right away, then
Exactly.
they didn't care enough to put that effort into it. So, you know.
Wow, that was yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think that's about it for today. Thanks to everyone that's joined the Gundam Explained show live. Again, this has a podcast form too, so if you want to like listen to it later, if you didn't catch the whole thing, podcast will go up the next day. Also, check the links in the description. Steven's page is there. I'm there on Wednesdays. We have a lot of fun. But also, I forgot to mention, there's a contest going on in the Gundam Explained Discord. It's the Gundam Poser contest. There's a channel in there just called Gundam Poser. The idea is just take a picture of your Gunpla or Robot Spirits, post it, and then people will react, and something that gets the most reaction will win something. I'll send something, but also our social media admin Ashley, who was on the last Gundam Explained live show, will also contribute to that too. So,
Nice.
um,
Yeah, I
that should be
totally
pretty cool.
misunderstood what that channel name meant, and I went in there, started making fun of people, and like it was.
I know. That's why I used that name. I liked kind of the double entendre there with the
There you go.
Gundam Poser. But yeah, so cool. Yeah, thanks everybody. Hope you all have a good weekend, and we will talk later.